This is American Real, where we aim to inspire, empower, and enlighten you through the stories of our guests. Here's your host, Roger Brooks.
I love how you mesh leadership with music. Talk a little bit about that. How does one overlap the other in your world?
When it comes to leadership, the ability to connect with people is what I've always been as a natural sense for me. Music was one of those things where I realized that there was this connection that no matter where I moved or where I went, there were people that enjoyed certain types of music, certain genres of music. And so that was one connection point that I was able to make very quickly, no matter if I was a new guy or not. There's just so many connection points you can have with people that if you start there, it becomes a lot easier to find common ground and trying to do the best work of our lives, try to align each other on making sure that we both show up to the best of our ability.
What if you had a dream or desire to write your first book? You could finally share your story or express your views about a topic or subject you are passionate about. And what if 2020 became the year your dream became a reality? Turn a new chapter in your life, literally. Join me for a live webinar where I'll share my 10-step program for writing a best-selling book. Register now. Seats are limited. Don't miss it. I believe in you. Your best-selling book is waiting to be written. Don't let another week slip by.
This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. My guest today is Lorenzo Flores. You are an author, people leader, and host of Top 10 Management Podcast on Apple Podcasts. Lorenzo, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation today.
I'm really excited about this one because we share a lot in common. We're both authors, we're both podcasters, and I guess the main difference between you and I is that you're in sunny Florida and I'm here in still cold New York State. So it seems like we have a lot in common. And again, thanks for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I grew up in Michigan in the Midwest, so I'm very comfortable in the cold. And when I could get old enough to get away from the snow, I ran away, and I've been in the South, all parts of the country ever since then.
Well, you're smart. And what's it like living in that city that has so much tourism all year round?
Yeah, it's actually it's a lot of fun. Obviously, there's the entertainment value of being in a place where you can pretty much do anything. But I think from a family standpoint, amazing schools, amazing area, a lot of new growth and development outside of the city. And then from a career standpoint, there is a ton of movement now into Orlando in regards to all aspects of jobs, because these major entertainment industries, now you have hospitality, now you've got restaurants, you've got shopping, you've got retail, and now these large companies, Universal and Disney, are bringing in app developers and technology jobs and things. So we're starting to see a lot of young growth here in Orlando in the tech space specifically, a lot of incubators for small businesses. So it's a really cool time to be here. The parks are amazing, but there's so much more to love about Orlando outside of the parks.
So how often do you go to the parks?
I would say at least a couple times a month. I've got a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, two little girls. And so they believe that they are full-on princesses and that we are going to their castle, and they love it. So I'm there quite often for my girls.
That is great. And you recently put up a post that talked about mixing passion, persistence, and purpose. I love those three words. Can you talk about that a little bit and what that means to you?
Absolutely, yeah. Recently, I was highlighted in the Orange Observer here, kind of the local newspaper, for the podcast, and they highlight people that are, within the Winter Garden, kind of Orlando area. And when I got the physical paper, it just immediately flashed back to many, many years ago as a college radio DJ and a nightclub DJ. I was in the newspaper quite often for radio shows, for nightclubs, for events that we had going on, and it made me think about the fact that, having been really with my passion of loving music and loving sharing my creativity and helping to bring joy to people, I found that love in both music and I found it in leadership. And then really consistently just being persistent with it and really knowing that no matter what it is, if it's a passion for you, find a way to do it, find a way to be involved, whatever that might look like. And then always have a purpose, your why. What is it that you want to do from an impact standpoint? And again, I've just always loved having a positive influence on people. I've loved to see whether, again, if I'm a DJ in a club or on the radio, playing a mixture of songs that brings people emotionally back to a place and time when they heard that song and it connects to them, to now when it comes to leadership, being able to provide content and experience and mistakes and successes where somebody says, you know what, I'm not alone. I'm also a leader and I've made that mistake, or I've been thinking about that thing and I'm not going to do that now because I heard these guys talk about their trials and tribulations of doing something that I was thinking about doing. So it just really hit home for me when I took that picture and I posted it of, these newspaper articles from 20 years ago plus, and then the one that just came out last week. It was kind of a full circle moment for me.
That's so awesome. And if you can, take us back to your younger years in Michigan, I would assume is where you began your love for music and DJing. What was the era like then? What kind of music did you enjoy and then play on the radio?
Absolutely. So I've always had a love for music, and my father who raised me, he had eclectic music taste. He was a Vietnam vet, and he listened to everything from Ravi Shankar sitar to Van Halen to Metallica to even LL Cool J. So he just had this amazing music that was always playing in the house. My mom was a Genesis, Phil Collins fan and Heart fan. So every time I came home, there was always music playing, and my dad got this gigantic at the time JVC, CD player that was brand new, and the turntables. And so I just grew up with this love for music. Started playing saxophone in 5th grade. Had a love for jazz and blues, and then I got into my high school and my college years, and that's really where I found this connection specifically with hip hop. And so I grew up in what I believe to be the golden decade of hip hop, which was the '90s, where you really had amazing music from all over the country, and every region of the country had a certain sound to it, and you could tell immediately based on the music, the way people were rapping or the lyrics, where they were from. And so I really took on to vinyl DJing. You can see kind of in my background here, I have everything from my top 5 MCs to a George Clinton record that he signed, to D-Light, to a rock guitar from my friends that are into rock music. So I just music has always been a thing for me, and I've always loved it. And so for me, '90s hip hop, vinyl. If we talk about it, I could take you down a rabbit hole of anything '90s hip hop related.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so awesome. I could relate. I grew up a bit before you, but definitely '90s was one of those eras that really stands out as being the golden age, especially for hip hop. And I love how you mesh leadership with music.
Mhm.
That's really unique, but not too unique, because I actually just interviewed another gentleman, Matt Gagnon, and
Oh,
he talked
okay.
about the very same thing. He's out of Austin, Texas area, and
Yep.
he's a big music lover, and he talked about meshing those two things. And talk a little bit about that. How does one overlap the other in your world?
Sure. Well, I think when it comes to leadership, the ability to connect with people is what I've always been as a natural sense for me. I moved in my youth about every 4 years of my life, and they were big moves. They were different schools, different cities, different areas, and so at the time it was very painful because it's not fun to be the new kid. And learning people and different types of things. And I moved all over the state of Michigan. But what I did learn was that we're more alike than we are different. And music was one of those things where I realized that there was this connection that no matter where I moved or where I went, there were people that enjoyed certain types of music, certain genres of music. And so that was one connection point that I was able to make very quickly, no matter if I was a new guy or not. And so as I learned about that, and I learned that you could connect over certain things, as I kind of grew into leadership roles and, had my first job at McDonald's, and then I worked at Rite Aid, and you kind of had my entire career in customer service and retail. I found it that connection with people and building relationships and finding elements where you can then have a conversation, a dialogue about who you are as a person and what you're passionate about and what you love led to then this element of building trust, where now, because I know you and because we can connect on something, we can now talk about work in a very different way, and I can talk about expectations in a very different way. And so for me, music was that thing that really helped me to understand that there are connections you can make with people outside of music, whether it's being parents, whether it's other types of hobbies, whether it's what city you're from, or there's just so many connection points you can have with people that if you start there, it becomes a lot easier to find common ground and trying to do the best work of our lives, try to align each other on making sure that we both show up to the best of our ability, whether I'm your manager, I'm your peer, or I work for you. So that's kind of for me how those two really overlap.
That's, again, just amazing. And this world is so small. I mean, I get the chills as you're talking because we connected on LinkedIn. It seems to be the place that's just blowing up for people in a wonderful way. And today's episode that launched was a gentleman, Yoram Solomon, and it was called The Importance of Trustfulness.
Nice.
You just talked about trust, and his whole platform is based around trust. We talked about, even on LinkedIn, who do you know who to trust, who not to trust? And here you are bringing that into your world from all of your experience. It just led to that one word, which was trust. So how important is trust in your family life, work life, and with your friends?
Trust is everything. I mean, being your authentic self is a big piece of that. People want consistency in life. If you're, if you have a partner, that partner wants to count on you for certain things in life. They want you to be consistent. They want to know that how you react in certain situations. They want to know that you're aligned on life's goals, on parenting, on both, supporting each other personally and professionally, that type of thing. When it comes to friendship, same thing. You want to be able to call on somebody and know that they're going to be honest with you, know that they're going to have your best interests in mind, and know that they're going to sometimes challenge you and push back on you and tell you that you're being an idiot, you're not listening, you're making bad choices right then. And it may be painful in the moment, but you can go to those people. And then I think in the professional world, and specifically leadership, trust is everything. If you're going to ask people to challenge themselves, to take calculated risks, to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I really want to do a good job here, but I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm really struggling with this, or how I said I could do this job, the reality is like I'm having a hard time doing this job. If you want people to be that vulnerable with you, you have to be just as vulnerable with them. And when you admit mistakes and you stand up in front of a team of people and say things like, hey, first and foremost, let me tell you, I'm sorry. I apologize. We dropped the ball here. We didn't do this the way in which we were supposed to do this, or to what we know our potential is. But like, if I'm the leader, if I am the one who is kind of, accountable for this entire thing, I own it. And this is my mistake, and I'm going to take this thing. But I want to know, what can we do to get beyond this? What can we do to fix this? What do you need from me as your leader for us to get better here? And if you do that on a one-to-one basis or in a larger group setting, that is the type of vulnerability and authenticity that really makes that trusting element, where now your people will go to you and be the same exact way. So for me, it's just one of those foundational elements that I think you have to have as a person. I also believe that trust isn't earned; it's disearned. So what I mean by that is, either you trust somebody you give trust, or you hold trust right off the gate. If you and I talk, I'm just, hey, I trust you. I trust you to have this interview. I trust you to, ask me great questions that will allow me a platform to express my feelings and what I believe, and hopefully build more connections and listeners, that type of thing. Or I don't trust you, right? And so if I trust you, we can live in that same space until you do something in which I say, hey, wait a minute now. Maybe there's something here that we need to talk about and discuss. So for me, it really is everything. And I think that if you can be in that space and really establish great trust with people, that I think your connections and I think your personal brand, when you're not around and what people say, is really the most impactful thing of how you can make sure that your legacy is out there.
And for people that may have stumbled, and we all do it,
Mm-hmm.
mistake, apologize, but how do you rebuild trust? What are some of the keys from a leadership standpoint that you look for?
Mm-hmm.
And for those who may be wanting to, make a better impression on their leaders, mentors, if they did make a mistake, how do you rebuild that trust?
First and foremost, I'll tell you, we all do it. There's no perfect leader. I've been doing this for a couple of decades now, and I feel relatively confident in my leadership capabilities, but I screw things up all the time. And what you want to do as a leader is say that out loud. Tell people that you did. Own it. Own the mistake. Say, look, I messed this up. This is my fault. Right? It literally just happened the other day, with my wife, where we had friends that were coming from out of town. That months ago, my friend said, "Hey, we're going to be flying out of Orlando, and we'd like to get a couple hours with you guys, and the kids can hang out before we fly out." And and he said, "And I'll follow up with you that week to finalize the plans." And I said, "Great." And I clicked it as, he'll follow up with me that week, no big deal. Well, he followed up with me the day before, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then he reminded me, and I said, "Man, I screwed this up." And I went to my wife and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I messed this up. I know we had made some plans, you had made some plans. They're in town. We want to see them. They want to see us. I'm going to cancel the thing I have going on so that you can change the thing you have going on so we can spend this time together. But I have to own it and say, I'm sorry. And it's my mistake. And let me now do something to make it right." And I think as leaders, you don't just own it, say that you're sorry. You then ask them what you can do to make it right, and then go do those things and then follow back up on those things. It can be really easy to say, and a lot of times in the element of leadership, there's this hierarchy that happens where when you're the boss or the leader and you make a mistake, people say, "Hey, I understand, no big deal, I forgive you." You say, "What can I do?" You say, "You know what, just next time, just make sure you communicate." And then you say, "Cool, check," and you walk away. You never go back and say, "Hey, how am I doing at communicating? Roger, I know I screwed it up last time. Am I getting better at communicating? I don't want that to happen again." When you follow back up, it helps your people to understand that you're serious about fixing the mistake, and you're putting forward actions to not have it happen again.
Those are some wonderful qualities. Wonderful qualities. You call yourself a people leader. I never heard that expression before. I really like it. What does that mean to you, Lorenzo?
Uh, Remembering that we work in service of our people. When you say that you want to be a manager or a leader, that's within your title. What you're really doing is you're raising your hand and you're saying, "I want to be directly accountable for the development of other people." That's actually what the job is. There's a lot of things that go into how you measure success. There's a lot of responsibilities in regards to results and numbers and strategies and execution, all these things that come with it. But when you are directly responsible for the development of people and you're accountable to that, you really work for them. So as a people leader, I like saying that, and it's aligned somewhat in the idea of a servant leader, but I think people also get that wrong quite often. So when I say people leader, it's like, I am here to lead my people. That means how I show up for them every day will be based upon what they need from me. That means how I provide them with coaching, how I provide them with recognition, how I provide them with feedback or negative specific, examples. It is how they want it, and it's delivered in a way that is helpful to them to become inspired, motivated, and more effective at what they're doing. So I say people leader because that's what I truly believe these roles are. And if you work in service of your people, you understand that you should always be evolving and adjusting, not how you like to do things, but how they need you to show up for them.
Fantastic. Let's talk about your writing. When did you start writing,
Mhm.
and what do you like to write about?
I write a lot of emails. I've been doing a lot of emails for a really long time, mostly by force, not because I want to. And about oh man, I would say about 7, 8 years ago now, I started to jot down some ideas. I saw some common themes in how I was talking to people, in examples that I was giving to them when I would talk about. They would say, what type of leader are you, and how do you see leadership, and how do I maybe address these situations? And I found myself talking about kind of the same three things in different types of ways. Well, I ended up having a friendship with somebody who was a consultant. And as we sat down, she was asking me, how do you approach this work? Because what I'm seeing, and how you kind of have this balance of your people, and of the strategies of an organization, and then of increasing the results that you're responsible for. I see that you have this intentful approach to that, and what is that approach? And so I walked her through it, and I was like, well, for me, it starts with vision. And people have to know why they do what you're asking them to do. They have to understand what the vision is, and how you make a larger vision local. So if you work for an organization, how do you bring the thing that are values to the organization locally to your people? And then the second thing is, are people clear? It's kind of clarity. Are people clear on what the job expectations are? Are they clear on what you expect from them? But also, are they also clear about what they should expect from you as their leader? And then the third thing was around support. How do you not just say you support people, but actually support people based on what they need? Sometimes that means observing things and approaching them. Sometimes that means, listening to what they're telling you they need. And even if you're not good at it as a leader, adjusting your style to help them out. So it kind of landed into this vision, clarity, support as my three pillars of leadership. I started to write, and I realized I was horrible at writing, because I edited as I would write. I was so used to sending emails that I would write something. I'm like, that's good, but let me change this. I could say that better. And I was horrible at it. And so I got a friend of mine named Jamie, and she is an author, and she did a lot of fictional writing. And she really helped me get all of my ideas out and organize them. And so I kind of did this pseudo writing thing where I had all these questions, and I would record my voice clearly, comfortable recording and comfortable talking. And so I would answer these questions in the same type of format. We would then transcribe all of it, and then we would organize my thoughts in a way that made more sense from a writing standpoint. So for me, I could not tell you that I'm a great writer, but I've learned how to take my words and put them into a book. And so I get to say that I'm an author because I put it on pages and it's published and out there. But that's where it all was. And my book was about vision, clarity, and support, the three pillars of my leadership platform.
And what's the title of your book so people could look for it?
Yep. I have one right here. It's the Leadership Crash Course on the Three Pillars of Success. And that's what it is: vision, clarity, and support. And I've got it as an ebook. I have it as an audio book, and I have it as a printable book as well.
Fantastic. And we'll publish the link as well so people could click right on it. So awesome. Look, I love how you got creative. You're obviously a wonderful communicator, and you worked with someone who helped you figure this out, but you were able to talk, transcribe what you said, and then I guess edit that until it was in a form that was at where you wanted it. But is that something that you think others can do?
Absolutely. I think that getting your thoughts out and your ideas out is critical for two reasons. Number one, it helps you to work through maybe the places where you're hitting hurdles, or it's like when you have a really good friend and you talk to them about your idea, and then you answer your own question, and they just sit there and they nod their head. Yes. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Just getting it out, no matter what the format is. If it's writing, then write. If it's journaling, then journal. If it's talking, then talk. And it doesn't have to be a podcast. You can record yourself on your phone, which is what I did to help write my book. But get your thoughts and your ideas out to be able to go back and either read them or listen to them again in the future. And then I think when you get those ideas out, which is why I believe that podcasting, video blogging, these things are so popular right now. And I'm a sucker for like reaction videos. I love watching other people watch other people's stuff and then react to it. I don't know what it is. I think it's funny. It's great to see natural, visceral reactions of people, because I have the same reactions and I get to relate to them when they do it. And I think it's the same thing with content. If you get your ideas out there, many times people will hear or read it or see that and say, man, that's exactly how I feel but I wasn't able to say it that way. You know, you're stating things that people have in their head, and it helps them to work through maybe what they're working on. So I just think it's therapeutic for yourself, but it's also very helpful in connecting other people to maybe ideas that they haven't yet completely formalized yet.
Yes, and our listeners are going to love this conversation. And I know several of them are probably thinking, geez, I'm too timid. I wouldn't be a good podcaster. I don't know how to. So what advice would you have for people that, I mean, I know what I would say. I want to see if you're going to say the same thing. If
Yeah.
people have been invited onto a podcast and they haven't accepted, they're just too timid, what do you advise?
You got to do it. You got to step out there and do it. You know what I mean? And like, look, video for me is weird, right? Because I was radio, I was a DJ, I do podcasting. And so doing anything video related is super weird for me because I'm just not used to being in front of a camera. Well, that's not optional anymore, right? People want to consume media in a video. They want to see your face. They want to, see your reactions. They want to feel the emotion of what you say. And I've had a lot of my friends challenge me on that, and now they put me in front of cameras and do things like this. So you just got to go do it. And is it going to probably suck the first time? Yes. Are you going to look back and roll your eyes and be like, man, I can't believe what was I? But once you start getting into the rhythm and the cadence of making it happen, it gets more and more comfortable, and you start to get really comfortable looking at a camera. And it is weird, and we all go through it. And there's anxiety and there's nervousness, and you want to be great, but with all things, until you actually get some chops and some practice in, you have no chance of getting better until you start doing it.
And isn't it wonderful that most podcasts like this is not scripted, right? We're just talking, having a great conversation. One idea goes into the other, and like anything, you kind of get better at it every time you do it. Is that right?
Absolutely. One of the reviews that we had, one of our first reviews on iTunes was a listener who to this day listens to the show, engages with us on social media, and she said, "Love your show. I'm giving you 4 stars. Can you guys say and ah a lot, right?" And so we thought about that, and Chris and I talked about it, and we were like, you know what? We listened back, we're like, she's right. We say that a lot. And then we realized why we say it is because it's just a conversation and it's not scripted, and we are thinking in the moment, and we're trying to gather our thoughts, and we're putting our words out there, and we're stumbling across sometimes, and we're repeating ourselves sometimes. And then a lot of the other feedback we got from people was, we're like, but that's why we love it. Because it's the best description I heard about our show from a leadership standpoint was, it feels like I'm walking by kind of the manager's office with the door open, and I'm listening to leaders talk about things that leaders talk about that they don't normally do that in public. Anything from compensation and reviews and and just do your damn job. Like, we say this stuff, we talk about it, and so people say they really appreciate that because they can tell that it's not scripted. And there are scripted, amazing leadership shows that are out there that we are fans of, that we absolutely love, that we think are amazing. But this is the way that we do it, and we've seemed to have struck a nerve in a lot of people, being authentic and being in the moments and allowing them to see and hear how we think through and navigate these conversations.
And speaking of in the moment, 2 questions for you off of that. Number 1, how important is it to be a good listener? And how important is it to be aware at all times? And I'm not even talking about podcasting. I'm talking in general.
Yeah, I think you have to be a great listener. Effective listening is critical. People want to be heard, including yourself. And I think that, again, as I mentioned, the whole support thing is the third pillar of mine. That's what I think when it comes to listening. I'm supporting you best when I hear what you're saying, when I can also kind of maybe help read between the lines a little bit, and I'm asking questions with intent to better understand where you're coming from, what your perspective is, what means something here, what are you trying to solve for. Like, these are all things that, if you're an effective listener, I'm listening with the intent of hearing you, not with the intent of responding. And there's a lot of people that I still, work with and coach, when even positive affirmations that are vocal, people say, yeah, yeah. When you do that, it makes it feel like you're trying to say something over top of me. So I'll just stop. And if I stop, you may be missing something that I'm trying to tell you. So effective listening is critical to, again, building that trust. I write things with a pen and paper. I have all the technology in the world. Everybody does. It's around us everywhere we go. It's really easy to type things. It looks nicer. It's more organized. You can do outlines and stuff. But when I sit down and I talk with somebody about something like their development, or I'm in a meeting and we're engaging in note taking, I write things with pen and paper, because for me, when it comes to engagement and being in the moment and being aware of everything, it allows me to be more in the conversation. It's something where I go, that's a great point. Let me write that down. It takes a second for us to pause. I'm not typing away and tapping away while people are talking. They don't know if I'm in an email or if I'm actually listening to what you're saying. But that type of awareness as a leader is critical. And if you spend enough time with your people to know, again, what they do consistently, you can see and sense the inconsistencies in their behavior or their dialogue or their questions, which then helps you to pause and say, hey, wait a minute, like, is there anything else going on here? This is not normally how we engage in conversation. So I sense that maybe there's something here that I'm not understanding or seeing. Like, what is that? Is everything all right? And when you're aware that way, again, it helps to open up the dialogue to potentially help them with whatever it is they're working through, and it continues to build trust with them.
As a people leader, what would you say are some of the primary pitfalls that individuals have that you see, on a regular basis?
The belief that as a leader you have to have all the answers, and that's a big one. A lot of times people come to their leader for help with something, and leaders have a hard time saying, you know what, I have no idea, or you know what, that's a great question. I'm going to need a second to think about that. To have that level of self-awareness, and what some people would call humility. I see it more as a self-awareness element. That is a big thing that a lot of leaders have a hard time doing, especially when you become new in a role. I think the second thing that a lot of leaders have is what I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is if I've had success in my job that's gotten me to this point now where I'm the leader, there's this tendency to believe that the way that you did it is the best way to do it. And that's not always the case. And it may have been effective and may have gotten you the promotion where now you lead people that were doing the same job that you were doing. But if you live in this space where, like, I got the promotion then equals the way that I did the job is the best way to do it, that is a hard pill to swallow, and it will be really difficult for you to build engagement and trust within your team. Because the reality is, once again, when you raise your hand and you take that leadership role, you work for your people. And so how they want to do the work is critical, and having them feel empowered that you believe in them and that you're there to help guide them is actually the thing that really truly builds culture and confidence across all the team members.
Lorenzo, you are so good. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation. We're helping a lot of people. You're helping a lot of people today by and I'm learning. So I love these conversations so much. Let's talk about your love of podcasting.
Yeah, it's go ahead.
I was just going to say, when did you start and how did it all come together?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I was in radio, and I did college radio for a long time, and just really enjoyed this medium of just talking, into a microphone and into an audience that doesn't exist, sharing feelings and then letting people engage with you. And so in radio, it was really cool because they would call the station, and the lines would light up and you could answer, and they'd want to hear a song, or they say great mix, or this was in this is 96, 97, all the way through to 2001. So it wasn't like you had this real-time internet engagement. There wasn't really social media for people to say, I'm listening to the show. It was really phone calls, and then what you would hear throughout the week about people that you ran into with the show. And so but I just love the medium of audio, and I was kind of an audiophile, and I've enjoyed music. And so when I turned 40 a couple of years ago, and I said, I want to get back into some type of audio passion. And maybe it's internet radio. Maybe I call a local radio station. Maybe I get back into DJing. I don't know what I want to do. I started asking some friends, and I said, podcasting. I enjoy podcasts myself. I think this is the thing for me. I spent 9 months doing a ton of research about, what are the best podcasts? Why are they the best podcasts? What do people enjoy about them? What are the things that people do in their shows that people appreciate? And started to kind of formulate what I wanted to do. and then got it out there. And the first episode I recorded with a really good friend of mine, Christian Abrahamson, on my Life of Lozo podcast. And we got done with the first episode, and it just felt like I hadn't stopped doing it for 20 years. Like, it just felt I was right back into what I did. And he had a great time. It was a fantastically fun episode. And everybody said, man, like, you just felt like you do this all the time. And so I knew it was the right medium for me. So I absolutely love it. I love the fact that you can multitask while you're listening to podcasts, that you can drop an ear pod in, go walk the dogs, listen, enjoy, do something else. I can make my lunches for my girls while I have an AirPod in early in the morning. My wife listens to her crime podcasts, while she's sitting on the couch, doing something on her iPad. So I just love the fact that you can consume media while also doing other things. And I think that it will continue to be a massive platform for a lot of people.
That's so cool. And again, I have so many of these conversations. I had the opportunity to interview Lauren Everts Bostic out of LA. She started the Skinny Confidential.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She said the exact same thing. She said, the reason I love podcasting so much is people could multitask. They could go to the gym, they could walk the dogs. And it's so true. It's one of those mediums where it's now becoming part of our lifestyles, those of us that listen. And to be part of it on the other side, it's such an honor and a privilege to be able to do what we do. And again, for those people who are thinking about it, because I love helping people just get past themselves and get out of their comfort zone.
Yep.
What advice do you have for those people? I know you said just do it before, but if they're really thinking about podcasting, you did a lot of research. I did a lot of research as well. But it's not as hard as it used to be, even a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, it's so much easier now. Obviously you can see I've got professional podcasting gear. I'm a little bit over the top, but it's also because I'm a DJ and I love gear, so I'm kind of a gearhead anyway. But there's elements of my podcast where I literally bought one of those microphones that plugs into the bottom of your phone and it clips on your shirt. And I would drive in my car, and for a while I was doing these long drives, and I would just clip the microphone on, and I would listen to songs, and I would talk about the songs while I was, and so I was doing these podcasts while I was driving my car. And I so much enjoyed that. And the funny thing was that the feedback from people that listened to those shows was like, it's great. Like, it's great to just know that you're in your car driving and you can hear your blinker and like all these things, and you're enjoying music. And so I share that because the quality is completely subpar to what you and I are doing right now. And I also think like the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world, that if you're a follower of a lot of his media and his content, his podcasts, he might have a microphone on, he might not. And if he does, he's the only guy in the room that's got one on. So sometimes it's hard to listen to his podcast because you can barely hear the other person. But the point is, it's about the content. So, even if, so I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're really into like Star Wars and you want to do a podcast about Star Wars. And there's a lot of people that do them. And you're like, I love it. I want to talk about it. I want to be with that tribe of people. Here's what I would suggest. Take out your phone and record yourself for a minute talking about some element of Star Wars, or why you love this character, or what your thought is with that. And then go onto that Facebook group and just post that audio. And just say, hey, check this out. This is my 1 minute thought on this character on Star Wars. What do you guys think? Let people hear it and then respond to it. That is the precursor to maybe you wanting to get into podcasting. Get comfortable with your voice. Get comfortable sharing in the audio format. Use the voice when you send people messages on your phone. That's an option that people have now. You can record audio. So instead of typing away in a text message, just hit the record button and say, hey, Roger, what's going on, man? Hey, we're going to go to the movies at 3 o'clock today. Like, I'll see you there. And then send it as audio. Get used to doing those things and let people be like, dude, why don't you just text me? And be like, I'm trying to get used to my voice. Like, let me do my thing, right? Just get used to recording yourself. And again, I think the more that you do those little things, the easier it becomes to then sit down and really put some content out there. But it's free. It's free to put out a podcast. There are so many platforms that you can just put your stuff out there, and then you learn a couple of tricks. You can go and YouTube how to connect your RSS feed, and there's your show. It's now on Apple Podcasts. It's amazing. It's very cool. It's very exciting. I'm in a whole bunch of different podcast groups on Facebook, and I love watching people go up there and say, hey, I finally did it. I put it out there and I got 9 downloads, and the whole group was like, hell yeah, go, like, who cares? I was, Chris and I recently celebrated 1 million downloads on our show. And for perspective, thank you. Yeah. For perspective, I went back and I took a picture and I said, the first episode we released the first day, 12 downloads, 12, right? Now we get thousands and thousands and thousands in one day, but we had 12. And I said, that was it. But that's where it started. It starts somewhere, just put it out there.
Wonderful. Can you talk a little bit more about your podcast itself? What's the subject matter for the most part? I know you talk about people listening in, and how often are you publishing?
Yeah, so Hacking Your Leadership is the name of the podcast. We have grown over the last 2.5 years, where now we publish 4 to 5 times a week. When we first started the show, we wanted to talk about leadership. We said, 20 minutes feels about right. People driving to work, driving home, maybe on a break. We wanted to have content that was consumable, that was good dialogue and conversation, but we also wanted to give some little tip or trick. So we called that the 1-minute hack. So if you listen to an episode on Monday, it's our 20-minute episode. We'll talk about a topic, and then we'll say, now here's our 1-minute hack. And it's the funny part, Roger, it's never 1 minute. Sometimes it's like 2.5 minutes, it's 3 minutes, but we call it the 1-minute hack because it's good marketing, right? But we wanted to end every episode with that one thing. Here's the thing that you can go do if you want to get better at whatever the heck it is that we just talked about for the last 17 or 18 minutes. So that's every Monday's episode. Now we have Talent Tuesday. Chris, my co-host, has his SHRM HR, whatever it is, his HR certification. So every Tuesday he does a 2 to 5 minute episode specifically about talent, and that's Talent Tuesday. Wednesdays we publish our guest series or our guest interviews. Thursday is Thoughtful Thursday. We go back and forth on just leadership thoughts, and again, 3 minutes to 8 minutes. And then Friday is something that we added this year called Pay It Forward Friday, which we are highlighting other people that are doing great work in content in regards to leadership. And we're just saying, look, this is who we're talking about. Go check this person out, right? This is their content. This is what we appreciate about it. Here's their website. Their links are all in the bio. Go check them out, because we also know that perspective is everything. And this is not about just giving leadership content to our tribe. It's our opinion. We feel strongly about our opinions, like everybody should, but we get it wrong sometimes, and sometimes you need a different perspective. And a great example that we've talked about is Chris and I are 2 guys. You know what I mean? We're 2 guys with kids and families. That's a really small niche of leadership perspective. And so we want to make sure that we have the voices of every element of people that are out there talking about leadership. And that's why we wanted our guest series to be about the individual's voices and have, every type of demographic that we can find that we can highlight. But we just really wanted to share this year and use our platform to raise others up and say, you should go check out their stuff. And we think that you'll like it because we love it. So that's kind of the format of the show now and where we are for 2020.
Really, really smart. And again, we'll share the link to our audience so they could check you out, and hopefully we could bring you some new listeners as well. So congratulations on the 1 million downloads. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So we talked about a lot today. This has been great. I did want to just touch on LinkedIn for a moment, because that's how you and I met. Mm-hmm. Where do you see that platform going, and how are you using it? You have a tremendous audience, by the way. How are you using it to your advantage, and what do you encourage others to do so they could get more involved with LinkedIn?
Yeah, it is becoming quite quickly the platform to be on. I think for a lot of different reasons. It was always known as here's where I go to get a job, or here's where I go to have my place where recruiters might find me, and maybe I'll get recruited to my dream job one day. And what's happened over time is they've done a really nice job at LinkedIn of layering in additional elements of ability to add. It was first pictures, now video, now audio. Now you've got these groups. Now you can do live, LinkedIn video. They've done a really good job of adding these ways for you to put content out there. And so now I think you've got this space where people are like, look, I go to Instagram to see all the cool pictures and foodies and fun stuff and parties and everything like that. I go to Facebook because that's basically where my family is and my grandma is, and I can connect that way. And people use those different types of things. I've got TikTok now. I've got Snapchat. I've got Twitter. We have all these different places of engagement. And I think what's happening is LinkedIn is quickly becoming a place where It's like, let's talk about positivity. Let's talk about moving people forward. Let's talk about helping one another. And yes, you're always going to have those people that are there to cause a mess, whatever. Like, you can't escape that. But I think that the control that you have in LinkedIn and the tribes of people that you can find, there's a ton of positive energy, and it's global. And there's a ton of ways for you to share your messaging out there. And I just think that the support of the communities on LinkedIn is fantastic. And it's very easy to like, comment, engage, repost, reshare. I just like what they've done with the UI in LinkedIn. And yeah, it's funny because I've got a pretty I've been working on LinkedIn for years, and for a long time, we would just share snippets of the podcast. We would share some memes out there. We would engage with people on the show, and again, as a part of this year, we really wanted to supercharge the content that we were putting out, and really, that's where we built our tribe within LinkedIn. We were doing mail messages and tagging and hashtagging and tagging guests of the show and people of articles that we would read. And so that's really where we built our following. And so now we kind of feel that we owe it to our followers on LinkedIn to do even more this year. And I'm excited for it. And so we've really pivoted in 2020 to put out a lot more content in a lot more different ways.
That's incredible. And as you're talking about this, the one thing that stands out to me is it's not easy, right? It takes work. You have to put the effort in. You have to do the work. You have to get up early, stay up late, whatever it is, but you have to put the effort in. It's not going to happen by itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's being a music guy. I worked with a lot of artists when I lived in LA, and I would always ask them one of two questions. Like, are we making an album for you to play in your car, or are we making an album that we could sell in a record store? Those are two different approaches to doing what you want to do. If you want to pay me as a producer or as a DJ and we make an album that you can play for you and your friends, that's cool. And you can do whatever you want, however you want to do it, without any real structure or framework around what would be acceptable in the commercial outlet. Now, if you want to create an album that you want to put in Tower Records or play on the radio, there are things and structure that you have to put into place along with the marketing and promotion of letting people know that you're putting an album out. So I feel the same exact way with LinkedIn, is that if you just go on there and post every once in a while and put a cool picture or repost a motivational meme, then cool, that's probably what you'll get back. If you go out there and you engage with your audience and you tag people and you go into their posts and have dialogue and conversation in the threads and like things and share things and follow people, you put that out, you'll reciprocate, and they'll come back to you. And I think that's how you build a network. So I completely agree with you. It's a lot of work, and it's probably honestly why we didn't do much of it until 2020 was because we kind of saw that as like, we've got all this other work to do in the podcast space. Let's leave that alone. And what we've realized is that we've kind of shortchanged ourselves, and now we have to get it up and put that work in and engage with our audience. And we've now seen a lot of the fruits of that labor.
Where do you see yourself in 3 years?
I think I see myself with another book out. I think I see myself having a lot more conversations with leaders and organizations around building culture, around kind of where we are right now culturally and from a society standpoint around leadership. I see myself putting out more content in different ways and platforms. I'm going to be speaking up at the upcoming LinkedIn local event we're doing here in Orlando about podcasting and about personal branding. So like I see myself doing more and more of that. And yeah, I think we've got a lot of things that we're adding to the podcast that I think are going to be really, really cool and different things that I think people will appreciate. I really want to find a way to not only offer people content in how we see leadership and hacking leadership, but also steps and ways to go out there and help them become better leaders and help serve their teams in a different way. So kind of that's where my head is at right now, is we've got some really cool theories of leadership and acronyms and things that Chris and I have come up with. And now we're looking to layer that into, and then here's what you do with it. Don't just think about it and read it, but now go do these things, and this should help you down your path of being able to show up as the best version of yourself.
Wonderful. Lorenzo, you have great energy. You are positive. You're an optimist. You're just, you seem to be in a good mood, which is wonderful. And we've talked several times. You're the same guy every time. Have you always been like that?
Yeah, I am I'm an I would say I'm an optimist, but I'm a realist. I kind of as I mentioned earlier, moving around my childhood every 4 years, was quite challenging for a lot of different reasons. In being the new kid, in growing up in the Midwest at a time when everybody worked in the UAW plants and things were shutting down. Like, there was a lot of hard times, and I think that what I learned about that as a child and kind of growing up is your life is what you make it, and it's how you see it. And if you can approach everything with a certain element of optimism and gratefulness for what you have, what you're able to achieve, and if you work in a place of service of others, if you really do your absolute best to help people, no matter what it is in the job that you do, and you go out of your way to give people your time and your energy, then I think that comes back completely. And so that's really what I want to role model, not just for the people that I lead, but now I've got two little girls. Right now, I owe it to them to be that person in public and private, all over the place, because I have now been able to have an amazing career, an amazing opportunity to do something that I love with podcasting and passion, because of being that way and seeing things that way. So, I think I've always been that way. And if you ask my friends and ones that I've known for decades and decades and decades that I still talk to today, I've always been that guy. I've always felt that, like, if you put good, positive energy into the world, it comes back to you tenfold.
Awesome. If you were to take out your cell phone and call the 20-year-old Lorenzo,
Mhm.
who would you tell
um, Trust your gut and don't do the nightclub thing.
him?
Uh, growing up as a DJ, and doing nightclubs and parties and radio, I enjoyed it, and I did it because I loved the music. And I had a lot of friends that went the DJ route, and they have done some significant work in the music industry. I mean, some really big names in the music industry that are living that life, and they are artists, and they are out there, and they're touring the world, and they're doing amazing things. It's cool to see them do that. But I made a choice that that's not actually the life that I wanted to lead. I felt that I was here for something different, and I struggled with that when I walked away from it. I really struggled with, like, man, I've got all this kind of what people say is talent and love and passion, and I just enjoy this so much. Like, am I making the right decision to walk away from it and find other ways and outlets to creativity? And I would just tell myself yes. Instead of spending those couple of years second guessing yourself and really wondering, that was absolutely the right choice. And here I am today, right, with a different path, but still doing what I love to do in a different way. But I couldn't have all the things that I have now, I believe, if I had made that choice, because I probably, who knows what would have happened to me. Those are very fun times. Hollywood and celebrity is interesting, but it can be very dark. And I think I probably would have darkened my optimism. So I'm very happy that I didn't do that.
And you have a lot of life to live. You're a young guy. At the end of the day, though, when your work is done, you
Mhm.
know, 40, 50 years from now, hopefully, what do you want your legacy to be?
Um, uh, that I was there for people when they needed me. Simple as that. I think when you're a leader of people, that's a part of the job. That you're supposed to be there. You're taking a career of being there when people need you. So I really I want that just to be the commonality through life in general. That it wasn't about the job or the title or whatever the heck it was, but that when people needed me to be there for them in whatever way that was, that I was there. I picked up the phone. I showed my face. I spent the time. I did the things that they needed in the moment. That for me is probably the biggest legacy. And then, of course, being a fantastic father and having the love of my family and my friends and my daughters and that type of thing. But for me, I really want to live a life of service. So that to me would be the ultimate thing.
Awesome. So if people want to reach you, Lorenzo,
Mhm.
what's the best way for them to get in contact?
Yeah. Email is lozo@lifeoflozo.com. Hacking your leadership, through the podcast, hackingleadership.com, info@hackingyourleadership.com. But yeah, Lorenzo Flores on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with each and anybody who's watching this that wants to connect, wants to check out the podcast. We really pride ourselves on connecting with our listeners. And a lot of our episodes are dedicated to people that have questions. We get a ton of questions all the time from leaders across all industries. And so if you have questions, if you want us to talk about something, we love that. It makes our job so much easier when we get on the microphone to say, hey, listener question, listener topic, let's go. And so, connect any way that you can, but we'd love to talk to you.
Lorenzo Flores, you are an inspiration. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, and welcome to the American Real family.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate it so much, man.
Thanks for tuning into American Real. Be sure to visit our website, americanreal.tv, or search for us on iTunes or YouTube for past episodes. While you're there, please rate us or leave us a review, as that helps others find our show. I am truly grateful and appreciate all of your support. If you'd like to be part of our inner circle or want one-on-one coaching, check out the American Real Learning Academy, where we have self-help groups and courses so you can build the best you. We also have a new Facebook group where you can connect with high achievers from around the world. If you want to go even further, maybe you're determined to write your own book or launch your own podcast, contact me today to see if we could help. You can reach me through Instagram or Facebook, or email me directly at roger@americanreal.tv. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.